everyone, and happy Tuesday to you. I'm Karen Dubin, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the main facilitators for Sweet Institute. And I am going to continue on in reading with all of you Carl Rogers on Becoming a Person. Yesterday we stopped in the middle, the beginning of the first paragraph in the middle of page 75. So that's where I'm going to take off from here, and we'll read perhaps to the middle of 77, because after that it looks like it's a clinician and client dialogue, and I'd like to do that part as a whole piece, and that might be a little bit longer, so maybe we'll take care of that tomorrow. Yeah, let's see how we do today. So here we go. I have recently made an attempt to begin such a description of client-centered therapy. I will not repeat this description here, except to say that from the clinical and research evidence, there seem to emerge certain persisting characteristics in the process. The increase in insightful statements, in maturity of reported behavior, in positive attitudes as therapy progresses, the changes in perception of and acceptance of the self, the incorporation of previously denied experience into self-structure, the shift in the locus of evaluation from outside the self to inside the self, the changes in the therapeutic relationship, the characteristic changes in personality structure, in behavior, and in physiological condition. Faulty as some of these descriptions may prove to be, they are an attempt to understand the process of client-centered therapy in its own terms as revealed in clinical experience, in electrically recorded verbatim cases, and in 40 or more research studies which have been completed in this area. My purpose in this paper is to push out beyond this material and to formulate certain trends in therapy which have received less emphasis. I should like to describe some of the directions and endpoints which appear to be inherent in the therapeutic process, which we have only recently begun to discern with clarity, which seem to represent significant learnings and on which research is as yet non-existent. In an attempt to convey meanings more adequately, I shall use illustrative material from recorded interviews from one case. I shall also limit my discussion to the process of client-centered therapy, since I have reluctantly come to conclude the possibility that the process, directions, and endpoints of therapy may differ in different therapeutic orientations. Next section, the experiencing of the potential self. One aspect of the process of therapy which is evident in all cases might be termed the awareness of the experience, or even the experiencing of experience. I have here labeled it as experiencing of the self, though this also falls short of being an accurate term. In the security of the relationship with a client-centered therapist, in the absence of any actual or implied threat to self, the client can let himself examine various aspects of his experience as they actually feel to him, as they are apprehended through his sensory and visceral equipment, without distorting them to fit the existing concept of self. Many of these prove to be in extreme contradiction to the concept of self, and could not ordinarily be experienced in their fullness, but in this safe relationship, they can be permitted to seep through into awareness without distortion. Thus, they often follow the schematic pattern, I am thus and so, but I experience this feeling which is very inconsistent with what I am. I love my parents, but I experience some surprising bitterness toward them at times. I am really no good, but sometimes I feel that I am better than everyone else. Thus, at first the expression is that I am a self which is different from a part of my experience. Later, this changes to a tentative pattern. Perhaps I am several quite different selves, or perhaps myself contains more contradictions than I dreamed. Still later, the pattern changes to some such pattern as this. I am sure that I could not be my experience. I am too contradictory. But now I am beginning to believe that I can be all of my experience. Perhaps something of the nature of this aspect of therapy may be conveyed from two different excerpts from the case of Mrs. Oak. Mrs. Oak was a housewife in her later 30s who was having difficulties in her marital and family relationships when she came in for therapy. Unlike many clients, she had a keen and spontaneous interest in the process which she felt was going on within herself, and her recorded interviews contain much material from her own frame of reference as to her perception of what is occurring. She thus tends to put into words what seems to be implicit but unverbalized in many clients. For this reason, most of the experts in this chapter will be taken from this one case. From an early portion of the fifth interview comes material which describes the awareness of experience which we have been discussing. So I'll continue on, and then we'll pause before at the section break, which will be at the bottom of page 78. So client. It all comes pretty vague, but I keep having the thought occur to me that this whole process for me is kind of like examining pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. It seems to me I'm in the process now of examining the individual pieces which really don't have too much meaning, probably handling them, not even beginning to think of a pattern. That keeps coming to me, and it's interesting to me because I really don't like jigsaw puzzles. They've always irritated me, but that's my feeling. And I pick up these little pieces. She gestures throughout this conversation to illustrate her statements. I pick up these little pieces with absolutely no meaning, except the feeling that you get from simply handling them without seeing them as a pattern. But just from the touch, I probably feel, well, it's going to fit someplace here. Therapist. And at that moment, that's the process. Just getting the feel and the shape and the configuration of the different pieces with a little bit of background feeling of, yeah, they'll probably fit somewhere, but most of the attention's focused right on. What does this feel like, and what's its texture? Client, that's right. There's almost something physical in it. Therapist, you can't quite describe it without using your hands. A real, almost sensuous sense. And that's right. Again, it's a feeling of being very objective, and yet I've never been quite so close to myself. Therapist, almost at one and the same time standing off and looking at yourself, and yet somehow being closer to yourself that way. Then, And yet, for the first time in months, I'm not thinking about my problems. I'm not working on them. I get the impression that you don't sort of sit down to work on my problems. It isn't that feeling at all. That's right. I suppose what I mean actually is that I'm not sitting down to put this puzzle together as something. I've got to see the picture. It may be that I'm actually enjoying this feeling process, or I'm certainly learning something. At least there's a sense of immediate goal of getting that feel as being the thing. Not that you're doing this in order to see a picture, but that it's a satisfaction of really getting acquainted with each piece. That's it. That's it. And it still becomes that sort of sensuousness, that touching. It's quite interesting. Something not entirely pleasant, but I'm sure, but a rather different sort of experience. Yes, quite. And so I've now played both roles, therapist and client. And so as we continue tomorrow, we will continue at the bottom of page 78, where it starts with this excerpt. So thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoyed my dual role play, and I look forward to reading again for you tomorrow.